second session of the day here at IRF 2017. For the past couple of days, we've been talking about the omni-channel. We've been talking about what it takes for retailers to understand their consumers, how to get those customers in the door, how to keep them as loyal customers. And all of it boils down to just one word: data. How do you capture the information that you need? It used to be as simple as saying, we've got a loyalty program, we know their name, we know their phone number, we have their email, and then we're going to bombard them with as much spam as we possibly can, because that's all we do. We're going to send them emails that are completely irrelevant. We're going to send them text messages that annoy the hell out of them. But we don't know any better. So how do you cross from being that extremely annoying retailer to being someone who understands your consumer? In one of the earlier sessions today, we had someone who said, look, we know who our customers are. And across our 100 stores, we know who bought an XXL and who bought a small, and we only send him or her those relevant photographs, those relevant images. That's great. But how many people does it take to be able to do that manually? And how do you cross that point where you are using the data that you're gathering from your customers, you're using artificial intelligence, you're using technology to make sure that you can reach that customer without the expense that you're currently undergoing?
Okay, good afternoon to all of you sitting here. And I think despite the rain thing, you guys made it. Somebody loves data in this room for sure. Okay, and they can't go anywhere. Okay, so I think great to have you guys, and I think big thank you to begin with to this stellar panel to make it here despite rain. So I'm sure names like this would have attracted you to this August forum. Okay, there's so much talk about data in India, and as Ranjit reminded me some time ago, data, is it really in our culture? Are we really data-based people, or are we really comfortable with gut-based decision-making? People say data is the new currency, as we saw the topic. Somebody, I think Harsh, it was Clive who said that, Clive Humby? Yeah, Humby Clive, data is the new oil. Yeah, so I think various tomes have been written on data, yeah, and let me just stand and do this. Various tomes have been written on data, and it is the thing of the future, etc., etc. Okay, but how much is data truly being used in organizations? And we want to keep this discussion also a little interactive. Yeah, and I'm going to give you enough time to ask questions to this forum sitting here. Okay, so let me jump straight into the topic. We didn't have so much of data 8 years back or 10 years back. Okay, we have, I think, petabytes or terabytes worth of data today. Am I right? Yeah, we have loads of it. Okay, but are we actually much better, or we still send messages? I keep getting what in India we pronounce lingerie messages regularly. Okay, maybe somebody has some insight about me which I don't. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you people get messages for diapers where may not have kids at that age. Okay, so despite all of this data being around, something is still not working, and I'm going to actually start by provoking this panel, okay, on this. Yeah, so let me begin with Abel, who's right here next to me, and Abel is with Arvind, and I think Arvind has begun its journey on data. Yeah, and so it's, I think, in the last couple of years where things have really taken off on this front. I'm going to ask you, Abel, can you give me some examples? I think MDM, Master Data Management, is one of the things they're doing. In what way are you using this in the organization? And specific examples as to how you use data, and is it really the new currency?
It is no doubt the new currency, and Arvind started off using data, I would say, primarily internal focused first, where we focused on operational efficiencies, because that's also another way of saving cost, and which is, in other words, the currency. We looked at our internal warehouse time, turnaround times, and so on. And now it's where we are moving towards external focus, which is the customer focused, and we realize that if we don't have sanity of master data, our messaging to the customer could get irrelevant, or you would sell a large shirt to a small size person and vice versa. So we have adopted SAP HANA as a new platform, and one of the key components that we all stressed upon is utilization of master data management, and I think that is going to make us relevant for the customer messaging or engaging with the customer. So apart from delivering the service levels at the store, I think for us it's relevant to position, because we are a high fashion brand. So for us to position the right level of styling, right level of fashion, I think master data will help us do that.
Perfect, Abel. I'm going to jump now straight to Ranjit, who manages Chroma, and he's been in the past with companies like Shoppers Stop also, who have used data in some form or the other. So Ranjit, I think one of the things you talked about is the entire cell phone market and how you all use data and leveraged an insight. Can you tell us something about that piece?
Yeah, so a few years ago, we position ourselves as retailers with our target customer base being the affluent professionals. And we thought that a certain mobile phones of a certain price range is what our target audience would actually be interested in. But when we actually looked at data, when we looked at what customers were telling us, we use NPS and we use the feedback loop, very, very effectively in our organization. We have people speaking to customers, gathering data on what customers wanted, what did they, what was their experience like when they went into the phone, when they went into the store, and we collate that data and it's given to different departments to action on. We really found that customers are not really concerned about the price points. They come in to our stores expecting to buy phones, and it could be across price ranges. So, somebody could be buying a phone for their daughter and they don't want an expensive iPhone. So, looking at that data, we, looked at the assortment in greater detail, and we started stocking the lower end mobile phones, and we found to our surprise that they were really flying off the shelves. And today, mobile phones communication is one of our top categories.
Yeah, and we talk about so much of data being generated today on transactions through loyalty programs. But there are many of you retailers sitting in this room. Ask yourself that your category planning, merchandise assortment, how much is the data that you're really using in all of that? Yeah, I'm just going to leave that as an open question. Yeah, I'm going to jump now to Alexander. Yeah, and Alexander has an interesting perspective. In the past we've had loyalty programs in India, and that's a great way to collect data, because the customer swipes, he gets points, he feels good. Those points are actually worth peanuts, right? It's what, 0.2%, 0.5%, at the most 1% of sale. It's nothing, actually. But we get a lot of data. And India, luckily, is a society where we seem to be pretty free with giving data, right? I think in recent times, people are a little careful. But historically, mobile number de do, email ID de do, no problem. Yeah? Unlike European society, where they can be a little itchy about giving data. So Alex has a nice perspective where he talks about how you could pay with data. Yeah? So Alex, over to you.
Yeah, so I think what we all need to kind of accept being retailers is that we as a consumer online, we pay already with our data. How does this happen? I was yesterday also on a panel, and there was said, okay, online gives a lot of services for free. So like Amazon free delivery. But in the end, it's not for free, because we allow them and we give them as a consumer a lot of data. And the smart thing, and one of the things really Amazon and Google and all these online players are far ahead of most of us, is that they really make not only some nice knowledge and some nice maybe consulting charts out of that data, or maybe only fill some AWS servers. They really make profit out of that by selling that data to other parties. And so the strange thing is when having in mind how much time we spend online, it's a significant part of our lives, but most of the time, especially on the weekends, people spend time in retail, so in malls, in real locations. So therefore, it is necessary to make some kind of advantage out of this, these touch points. And what we did in Europe, so we cooperated with a pharmacy chain, so they have a lot of traffic. Yeah, nice, so a lot of data. But we have, together with them, we've been able to convince L'Oréal, the French brand, to spend significant amount of money to get in touch to these people who have been in the pharmacy. So L'Oréal identified, this is my target group, I want to convince them to buy a certain product. We've been able to send out specific kinds of ads to them, not annoying them, just only on platforms where they are open to receive that, like for example Facebook, like for example the one or the other app that is for free, so all of us accept there's a certain banner. And sending out this led for L'Oréal that they increased their sales. One campaign it was 12% increase, the other it was 13% increase of sales in the 4 weeks after the campaign was launched. So therefore, L'Oréal, the brand, was happy because they've made more sales, but also the pharmacy was happy because they made money out of their crowd of people who have been in. So this is something, and the consumer is happy because he received some kind of recommendations that was useful for him. Because we realized, okay, if this is a very young person who was in the pharmacy and we want to renew facial, I don't know, whatever product it was of L'Oréal. So we said, okay, you have to be at least 30, 35 years old to get targeted. So it also really was of high relevance. And that's why it was a kind of win-win-win situation. So everybody was happy. And in the end, everybody perceived that he made something out of that. Because this is the crucial thing, not only having data, not only collecting data, but to launch measures, and in the end to convert these measures to something that is real money or real profit. That's what it's all about.
Okay, so I think Alex talks about win-win on both sides with data, you know?
Vinay, if I can make a point. There are even examples of not only, there are retailers who actually give up their data. So for example, a lot of retailers, because the stores are not working as well as they would have liked it to, they go and list their products on Amazon. What you're really doing is you're actually giving up so much of customer data that Amazon would not have had to Amazon in exchange for that short-term sales. That is one. In fact, the large retailers like Walmart believe that Amazon also harvests data of AWS. So Walmart in the US has a strict rule that they will not work with any IT services companies who have their services hosted on AWS. So that's the kind of importance that they give to data.
Yeah, so like they say, data is the new oil is the buzzword, and it is a resource and you must keep it trapped with you in some sense, okay? Let me move down to Kiran on the other side, and Kiran represents Burger King, and I think Kiran, tell us about, you have restaurants which are, like service restaurants where you can come and sit and have your burger and the other things that Burger King makes. You have also delivery outfits, right, which predominantly focus. How do you navigate data around these two kinds of formats, and how does it work for you?
Unfortunately, at a QSR kind of business in retail, you can't collect the customer information through some loyalty programs in front of a point of sale, where the checkout is just hardly 2 minutes and a hungry customer has to be fed. So it's very difficult to get a customer information kind of data at point of sale. However, we have adopted ways and means how to capture customer information, how to get connected to a customer at restaurants by using a free Wi-Fi, giving a free Wi-Fi to customers where they connect to our Wi-Fi and they share their information. And we also encourage customers to give feedbacks, and based on that, they will be getting some coupons and discounts. And in that way, we bring the data into the system. But the other side of the business, which is onto an online platform, what happens is the customer has to share all the information, his name, mobile number, his office address, his residential address if the product has to be delivered. So we have a quality data from the customers, and we also have the patterns of the customer. If the customer is at home, what he is going to buy, if he is at an office, what he is going to buy, and what time, where he orders, and how to upsell it or cross-sell it. So that way we are using the data which we have collected from different platforms. The online platform makes more sense for us because it is easy to collect the data, whereas offline, it's not that easy to get the data. It is voluntarily given by a customer who wanted to be a fan and who wanted to be connected to us. So that's the stage where we stay today.
So, when you talk to us people, we in some sense represent marketing, loyalty, IT, various functions. And we'll always tell you that there is always an enrollment form, which I think Kiran touched upon: home address, office address, sometimes date of birth, mobile number. Now, in India, we have Aadhaar, or what is now called the India Stack, such a powerful tool, right? It has just 2 factors of authentication. You give your, 14-digit Aadhaar number, and you put your thumbprint, and an authorized recipient can get population of all fields, including date of birth, including a picture actually. It's a slightly grainy picture, but how many people? So we have in our company a telecom-based loyalty program which we call T24, and telecom industry is a little more leading edge than brick and mortar. We use this form of enrollment. So you don't need to fill any form. All you need to do is give your Aadhaar number and put your thumb on a simple thumb device, and we receive all the data at our end, of course, with your consent. And in India, consent is very, very easy. So I'm going to jump to Jamina, and Jamina represents Virtuous Retail, the famous mall company. She's also been with Reliance Retail, where I think she has worked a number of ROI-based models using data.
Yeah. So what we used to do is, obviously, we had historical data, and we used to look at that to see the patterns of store performance. Optical retail happens to be a very low-frequency purchase, 18 to 24 months before you go to your next purchase. So when we used to do new store launches or marketing for existing stores, that used to be a very valid data point, talking about how new stores, you would probably dwell on getting customers in. Later on, you would shift to reminding them that they need to change their spectacles. Again, incentivizing them to get any other family member to come in. So that data was used to, through the life cycle of the customer, actually capture his various purchase moments and get them to come in. And we had metrics over a period of time to really see if a campaign was successful or we needed to do something different in a particular city or a catchment if it was not matching the work standards which we had set.
How many people in the audience who have something to do with online business? Just raise your hand. Okay, that's really few. I would have imagined that number to be a much, much larger. In offline businesses in retail, how many people? Okay. Pretty much everybody else, yeah? And I think some people are both. They have online as well as offline. So, maybe online came to our lives, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And as retailers, offline, we always had a lot of data. We were always accused that, "Sala, itna data rakhte ho, tum karte to kuch nahi ho data ka." Then came this new bunch of online, often funded players. And they were much younger. They were most often engineers with MBAs. Much quicker on data, yeah, and they also generated so much of data because the sheer volume of data which came to them, because they didn't need a loyalty program. They were anyway collecting address, telephone number, everything, and I think they taught offline people a lot of new tricks which we never knew before. So I'm going to jump to Ruben here, and he represents Tata, and Ruben has a unique take on how it's not just using little bit of data that you generate internally, but I think how 360 degrees approach to data could make things work.
I think, Vinay, your question, instead of asking how many e-commerce retailers are there or offline, the question would be how many are online. I think we'll see significantly more hands in this room. So, quick some trivia. Apparently, I'm told about 90% of the data has been generated in the last 2 years. All our good old Munim, Bhai Khatas have taken hundreds of many centuries and years to collate a certain level of data, and last 2 years has generated 90% of it. And as we speak today, apparently there are about 5 billion connected devices, which is going to be in the next 3 years, apparently, multiplying by a factor of 5. We're looking about 25 billion connected devices. If you're looking at a deluge of data coming at us from myriad sources. So given that scenario, how do we manage this data and how do we redefine our ecosystem is how the e-commerce and the offline players will have to delve in the days to come and the months and the years to be working successfully. Some experiences from the offline scenario, I think taking on from where Abel mentioned master data management, this is something which has been used, but I don't think it's been leveraged to the hilt. In classic retail parlance, we talk about plan, buy, move, and sell. Everyone does that. But how many really speak the same language across all stakeholders? How many planners speak to the movers? How many movers speak to the salesmen in the same way that an article which gets generated in a system has the same tagging which is consistently read across players? In a single ecosystem, for example, a retailer involved with a set of retail, speaking with their customer base, the complications is not as much. But when we get onto the e-commerce space, and specifically in the omni space, our experience at Tata Click is we deal with multiple partners, giving data points of a similar nature in multiple formats, CSV format, text formats coming in. And with all robustness, typically the system fails. We all agree to deliver a customer experience, data is the single entity which enhances or delivers a true customer experience. So if our data discipline or data governance emanates from our internal sources and then moves on to our customer base, and when everybody's talking about how do we increase the value of our currency here, if we send garbage in, we typically start getting garbage out, and it's going to be very, very difficult, and the kind of infrastructure which will have to be pumped in, I think my IT friends here would say, to deal with that kind of deluge of data, and everyone wants everything. It's nice to have a lot of data and data analytics, but how much of it are you going to actually use? The other perspective I want to touch upon is when it comes to consumer data, who actually owns the consumer data? All retailers own it as if this belongs to me. Just take a step back and think it's the consumer's data. You are just a power of attorney saying it comes to me. The more you give back to the customer, the more data you will get from the customer. Something to think about. I think we've been dealing with a lot of brands wanting to cross-share customer data. The kind of resistance we face is incredible, given the fact that I might buy a Gap trouser from an Arvind store, but my top might be coming from a Madura garment store, but Madura garment guy doesn't know that Ruben bought the trouser from Arvind. But given the fact that if I do get to know, the benefit either for Madura and for Arvind would be significantly more. That's just the thought that I would leave for the group to take.
Perfect. So thanks, Ruben. And many of us, when we talk about data and our customers, we say that, yeah, I own 15 million. Have you heard people saying this? That, yeah, my program is 25 million. I own 10 million. Very frankly, customer kiske baap ka hai, right? This is not owned by any of us. Very frankly, there are 40, 50 million customers who are there on most programs, okay? Even though India is a very, very large country, yeah? So I'm going to switch gear a little. We've talked about using data within, from a transaction perspective, and I'm going to throw it now to Harshvardhan. Harsh represents DLF currently, but he's also been with ShopClose, which is regarded as, I think even in today's paper, I think I read an article that it's about how they've really cracked the lower tier market in India. And they don't directly, I think, compete with the Flipkarts, Amazons of the world. Harsh, tell us a little bit about non-transactional use of data specifically and how you've seen that.
Absolutely. I think since it's IRF and very pertinent to the retail fraternity, I'll start with a hinge to the overall topic that data is it really the new currency? So going 10 years before, as Humby Clive said, that data is the new oil, where he said it's like oil, it is useless in its raw form. But the more you refine it, data actually keeps on becoming money. And he said that 10 years before, it is so becoming relevant in these days, especially within the retail fraternity. One fundamental change which data has brought in is the fact that businesses suddenly have gone from being transactional in nature to becoming very consumer-centric. Data initially, and we have been all part of in last 15, 20 years of our professional careers, data used to be part of our transactional journeys of the top lines and the bottom lines, typically chaired by the finance guys in the companies. And suddenly, companies like Google, Facebooks, Flipkarts, Amazons, and Shopclues included, started pivoting their business model saying that, hey, data helps me to know more about the consumer, and when I know more about the consumer, I can develop a new business model around it. And pointing out to that what non-transactional value it holds. So for consumers' data, and there's a typical study I would like to quote here. There's a store in London called the Dollar Data Store. What that guy does is when you walk into the store, he'll ask you to give last 3 pictures of your camera, or last 3 messages in your phone, or some phone numbers, and he'll give you a t-shirt free or a mug free, etc. That guy is called Ben Ebin, based out of London. And what he's trying to tell us as consumers is the data that you have, your personalized and non-personalized data, is valuable. It's so valuable that I'm giving you merchandise free. And that brings a whole lot of debate which Europe is spearheading about personalized data, non-personalized data. How do we really, as consumers, value our own data? How do we use it? End of the day, if you look at Google and Facebook, the entire business model is, while Google allows you to search, allows you to use maps, etc., and everything, but in the end, his entire business model is based on data. And that's what brings us to the non-transactional revenue. So I personally see the entire data journey in 5 parts. As businesses, as retailers, we have the transactional data. We see sales per square foot in typical offline stores. We look at conversion figures. The next stage of it is getting into targeted CRM, which we used to do to contact our consumers. The next stage comes to targeted segmentation, which Google is using, which allows them to improve conversions by targeting specific cluster of consumers. And finally, what you will witness in next 10 years is a combination of big data, IoT, as Ruben has put in, around 25 billion devices worth $100 million US by 2020 would be all IoT. So IoT will revolutionize the data space, not just the online journey of consumers, but the offline too. And pegged with artificial intelligence and machine learning, that's a whole lot of data that would come in. So that's the future of data that would go. The non-transactional revenue stream, businesses who have been able to understand it, they have realized that you don't need a merchandise, a store, not even a product to make money. The only thing that you need to make money is to know more about consumers. That's what everybody at Amazon or Google is saying, being more consumer-centric. That's what Alex has been emphasizing in a lot of these forums, that businesses need to think about their consumers first rather than their sales per square foot. Right? If I know more about my consumers, my conversions, repeat purchases would be impacted, and suddenly I would be talking about not just customer acquisition cost, lowering it, but I'll be talking about a special terminology called customer lifetime value. So suddenly, if Vinay has come to my store, I don't look into the fact that he has spent 3,500 rupees. I look into the fact that today he spent 3,500 rupees, next month he comes with a repeat percentage of 25%, and so on and so forth for 6 months. Over a period of 5 years, Vinay would end up spending 1.5 lakhs with me. So he's not a customer who's worth 3,500 for us, but he's a customer with a certain conversion percentage, repeat, and a customer lifetime value that gets attributed. And what helps us to graduate as retailers to a CLV model is the usage of data, being more consumer-centric, and not just transactional revenues would be incurred by businesses, but also revenues which are non-transactional in the sense that, again, I would repeat, I don't need to sell product to you to make money. I have the data, and there are a whole lot of models, including cryptographic Bitcoins, which is an investment engine itself. Google makes money, Facebook makes money out of data itself, and data in itself will, that's a strong hunch, I personally believe professionally, that data would become the most valuable currency next 10 to 15 years. It is a man-made resource which is scalable, renewable, very sustainable, superior unit economics, and it would truly refine the new world economic order.
So I think the London store we are all waiting for when it comes to India. I think he'll have queues in front of him, right? Just give your last 2 messages, get a t-shirt. Alex, over to you.
No, I just want want to add, especially with also taking the example and also taking the experiences of e-commerce. So when talking about transactional data, this is great, and we need to even better and deeper analyze and use that data. But what is the main driver why Amazon today, the front page is significantly different compared to 3 years back, compared to 5 years back? The reason for that is that they took a lot of learnings from their bouncer. So when do people stop shopping on Amazon? So, and then try to find out what are the reasons for that. So that's non-transactional data. So that's kind of, they only visited, they only browsed around, and they didn't buy it. So that's kind of a failure. And as always in life, successes are nice and important, but more important really to further improve is to learn out of your failures. And this is what needs to kind of be implemented in retail and brick and mortar retail, that we are able to make use of the data that is around of all the browsers, all the visitors, and learn why they didn't buy when also they have been in the store. And when we make this happen, so, and also taking into account, for example, in fashion retail, only 20% of the visits are converted to a receipt. So there's 80% of potential that is already in the store that we just in quotation mark, need to realize. So, and if we increase that by 1 or 2%, the impact is significant.
So I think, I told you guys right in the beginning of this that we'll have enough time for questions. And I think this is as good a time as any. You've got the best minds in front of you in terms of data. So we have, I think, close to 25 minutes for questions, and I think we can take 6-7 questions. But a word of caution here. I've been attending this forum for the last 7-8 years. Anish Trivedi is usually here, almost every year. And a lot of questions sometimes get into selling a product or showing off knowledge. So I'm going to request, guys, I can see through it, this man can see through it. Okay, so don't do that. Identify yourself, identify your company, but pick these people's minds in terms of data is the new currency. So can I just throw the, throw it out to the audience? Anybody who would like to be the first one to go? The gentleman right here in front.
Hi, my name is Kapil Malhotra. I head Total Solutions Group. We are a mystery shopping company. I like to put the question from my perspective as a customer. We know data, we hear a lot about loyalty. We've heard about coalition loyalty and all of that. But really from a customer's perspective, we've not seen real data being used in a way that it's really driving loyalty from a product perspective, if not from a brand perspective, and really making the customer feel that my data is actually being used intelligently. So I'm not making it specific to a brand out here. I'm making it from a customer's point of view. I might be being used very well on Amazon or in Google, but I'm looking at an overall perspective. That is where I think the customer is still seeing its 30,000 feet views happening, but maybe the 5,000 feet view is still not happening.
Okay, so I think since he represents mystery shopping, right? I think let's give him an example. This is an example I know of from an earlier retailer I used to work with, where we analyzed complaints coming into the store. So, when you are in a retail store, guess what is the biggest complaint? Anyone, any guesses? Guys? What is the biggest problem people have? Huh? Sorry? Non-availability, anything else? What is the main problem where you really get into a panga with a store? झगड़ा कब होता है? ऑफर नहीं, वो तो मिल जाता है यार, थोड़ा लड़ने से, बट ज्यादा किस में लड़ना पड़ता है? एक्सचेंज. You agree? Returns and exchange is a big deal of debate. So when you go to a retailer, if you have for example, a t-shirt you come with, so our people, our own staff will sit like a CBI का forensic investigation. तो पहले देखेगा, sir आपने, have you used this product? So you'll say, नहीं, I bought it 4 days back, I haven't used it. इसमें सर खुशबू का स्मेल आ रहा है. So he'll ask you 400 questions, okay? He will irritate the hell out of you for a maybe 1100 rupee t-shirt, okay? Then what will you tell him as a customer? What do we normally say? Manager ko bulao. Is that right? The manager is typically a guy in a, let me not use the word, but let me use it, ill-fitting jacket, who will come, and finally, you will have spent 1-2 hours in that store And if manager is not able to solve your problem, you'll say, मैं chairman को जानता हूँ, मैं VP को जानता हूँ. Finally, आपको मरा के, they will give you that credit note, as it's called. It's a slip of paper which you can reuse. Okay? We analyzed that the bulk of the problems of irritated customers were around this particular thing. And mystery shopping told us this, our own data told us this, because we had a strong loyalty program. And we said, okay, let's go to a policy of no questions asked return. No forensic investigation, no smelling, no checking. ले लो, because any case लेना तो पड़ेगा आपको. 1 घंटा बाद, you might as well make it a good experience. And this really helped us in what Ranjit calls NPS measurement and our mystery shopping scores. Anyone else wants to add to this question? Harsh?
Yes, for mystery shopping, I'll give you one of my stints at Unilever's. So we used to do a mystery shopping for the personal fabric wash category, Surf Excel. And what it typically meant that just before the rainy season, Surf Excel would want to know how am I stocked at the top 320 outlets across the country. And which is basically trying to do a geodemographic landscaping of the catchment area, understand the households, look at that data and see how many kids, how many parents would dirty their clothes and with what frequency they would wash their clothes. And that used to define the entire visual merchandising and the stock up plan for all these stores. So I think mystery audit there helped to optimize the entire supply chain stocking there. Now taking an element into loyalty, and that's really a question because loyalty is so ubiquitous. All of us have certain form of loyalty we have rolled out, and we really look at the data. The adoption for each of these loyalty programs are like 0.2%, 3%, 5% of the overall consumer base. And we are not even looking at the repeat percentages of the loyalty programs themselves. So there is one aspect of what makes loyalty really comprehensible. What is the reason that consumers would use it? So there are 3 fundamental tenets of loyalty, which I believe, if achieved in future, would redefine loyalty. And so dogs are loyal, so essentially it would be called as royalty. So it would, one, be 100% interoperable in the sense that it's a single card which is operatable across all regimes, whether it is wallets, whether it is cards, or whether it is debit or credit. 100% universal, so it is accepted by all brands. And the fact that loyalty is personalized, as you say, that probably winner wants to shop at a particular menswear brand, and he would be delighted to have loyalty programs or additional cashbacks being given only through that.
Okay, I think we've focused too much on the mystery shopper, so let's go to the next question. Who wants to go? And guys, keep it open, keep it conversational, ask your queries. You're not going to get a bunch of people like this in the rains of Mumbai. This is really tough to get these guys in one place. Yeah.
Hi, I represent a company called Cashback World. My name is Manpreet Chatter. I've been listening to the debate very carefully. And going forward, I think the one most important point in registering customers is DIY. So you do it yourself. You get the benefits yourself, and you register for yourself. How do you think this fits in with all the businesses that you're running?
Okay, so anyone? Do it yourself, I think is the question. Should we be doing that? Have you tried that? Kiran or Ruben, have you tried that?
Yeah. See, this is a big thing. I mean, IKEA, I think, is one of the best proponents of do-it-yourself. It's a fine balance between engaging with the customer and not making it too easy. So whenever you have a do-it-yourself product, the customer's engagement and involvement with the product is significantly higher, and the loyalty and engagement factor automatically goes up. I mean, you're talking about that. So I think IKEA is one of the biggest proponents. In the online space, there are a lot of tools which are engaging to that, which is the AI-related stuff in furniture, example, where you set up your own room, you play around with your room, you play around with your decor. Those are areas which are actually with the fundamental objective of getting the customer engagement going through significantly higher. These are tools which are developing. You're absolutely right. And this is an area of engagement across both offline and online, is something which will hold in good stead when it comes to consumer engagement and consumer loyalty.
Okay, let me give you an example. I think you represent cashback in that sense. And I'll give you an example from our business. We created a wallet called Future Pay Wallet, in a sense modeled after Alipay or any of the large retail wallets worldwide. And we said, let's get customers to fill in details. That might be one part of your do-it-yourself question. फॉर अ सिंपल 100 रुपी कैशबैक आपको पता नहीं इंडियन कस्टमर क्या क्या नहीं करने को तैयार है, यू नो. सो इफ द बेट इज राइट, यू कैन एक्चुअली आउटसोर्स योर एंटायर एनरोलमेंट. वो अपने कुत्ते का नाम, फादर का नाम सब देने को तैयार है, just for that bait. Yeah, but anyone else wants to add up?
So I think since he's from cashback, it would be relevant that one thing that is happening in the fintech industry is that disruptions are happening in isolation everywhere. So while somebody is solving for consumer lending, like the Cash Cares, Zest Monies of the world, we are rolling more and more loyalty programs, while Paytms and ICICI banks, Issuer banks, etc., and wallets are leading the cashback agendas of the world. I think from a consumer standpoint and as retailers, it's our responsibility to integrate this entire ecosystem, right, in order to synergize it so that as a consumer, somebody while he shops, he not just is able to get a instant loan there, he also gets a cashback on the same card and also gets incentivized with loyalty. I think that is the responsibility as retailers of the products and services we should be rolling out in next 3 to 5 years to make the consumers really feel delighted.
Yeah, so let's move ahead. More questions? I'm only getting questions from these two guys in the front row. People behind?
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Vishweshwaran. I represent TellerMate UK. This question may be a little weird. We talk about data. What about the misuse of data? Just to give an example, my email ID, I am getting almost around 50 to 60 emails. All are unwanted emails, mainly from the retailers. I changed my email now, and I gave it to 1 or 2, retailers wherever I purchase, ramen cloth or anything. Unfortunately, that is also getting shared.
Okay, we get your question.
Is there any protection, data protection?
So where there is use, there is misuse. So anyone want to take that?
I think, thanks for pointing that out, because we had touched over that point, and this discussion wouldn't have been complete if we wouldn't have talked about data privacy, data usage, and the rights of consumers. So you talk to Alex, Alex will tell you in Europe, the countries are so stringent that anonymizing data, collection of data, personalized data, non-personalized data, the entire protocol and usage, it's not just defined, but it is penalized on misuse too, right? As consumers, we don't really realize that what data we are giving. And trust me, retailers don't want your phone number and email ID. That's the last 2 things of the data that they want about you. There are a whole lot of non-personalized data that helps me understand everything about you except your phone number and email ID. So as consumers, what non-personalized data I'm sharing with retailers, it's a right and duty on both the sides. A whole to do with the Indian regime and the governance framework too, where in telecom we have made baby steps. There is a do not call list, right, which helps you to not be spammed by SMSs. But again, if you look very clearly, the policy there is for opt-out. So if you're getting disturbed, you have to opt out, but there's no mandatory opt-in like we have in Europe. So those laws, as they transform, and it's a catch-22 situation, I think the only way the law governance agencies will look at reforming those laws when as retailers, we would be at the frontier of using a lot of data, getting into consumer rights, etc., and that would pick up their brains to reform our laws.
Ranjit, you want to add?
No, I mean, I completely sympathize with you. I know, we have D&D lists here, but, there are marketers out there who take the D&D list and market to them because, they are readily very
They are the most valuable customers, actually. D&D customers, in my experience, are the most valuable. Their conversion is highest.
Yeah. So that is, but not to, but I don't think you are recommending using that, right?
No, I'm not saying that.
Yeah. But more and more organized retailers, I used to work for Shoppers Stop, I work for Chroma now, but we take customer privacy extremely seriously, and we make sure that the data that we have do not fall into the wrong hands, one, and we send only very limited messaging to those customers, because we know that bombarding customers with too much of messages sort of pisses them off, and they might actually not shop with us for that very reason. So we take that very seriously, and I'm sure a lot of organized retailers also take customer privacy
You must be
very
wondering, right? Any retailer you ask will tell you that they take this very seriously and all of that, but we still receive messages. God knows where they come from, right? Well, let's move to the next question, and not from that row, please. From some other row. Can I request that?
Hi, my name is Tushar Dhingra. I work for Smash, and we have around 25 centers in India and USA. I just wanted to understand from you, like you said, your valuable customers, how many times do you reach out to them, and how differentiated is your offering, and what kind of a response do you get?
So we reach out to them on a case-to-case basis. We mine our customers. We look at their past buying patterns, and if we find that there is a synergy between a product or a promotion that is relevant to them, that's the only time when we reach out to them. We reach out to customers every time they make a purchase. So very early, we are, I think, one of the first retailers who actually started emailing customers their invoices. We send them invoices. We will now start, sending some marketing messages, again, basis their past purchases and things that they might be interested in.
Frequency, thoda.
Yeah, but okay, let me touch on that, Tushar, for you. In general, and this is not a ground rule for every retailer, and it might differ for Smash. And in general, retailers tend to touch their identified customers typically once a week or once in 2 weeks, usually, okay, with varying messages, yeah, with varying targets. The conversion rates, what you asked about, typically tend to be anywhere from as high as 15-20%, which is very high, and when you do something very targeted, to as low as 0.2% when you tend to go mass, or even lower.
So
yeah?
my worry is that, I'm one customer, and I am being identified by so many brands. How do I remain to be unobtrusive, but still interesting enough to be, receiving those messages?
So you are asking this question from a customer perspective.
So,
yeah.
I'll just pitch in, and this might be relevant to Smash. So most recently at Cyber Hub, we have Smash there along with people in company. So Cyber Hub is a unique Esplanade structure, which is a mix of retail, F&B, and entertainment in Gurgaon. We launched our first product called Hubber there. So Hubber uses the data in terms of becoming your own personal virtual concierge. It's not an app, it sits on your messenger. So you can really talk to him saying that I'm getting bored at Cyber Hub, and he will say, why don't you go to Smash? So I'll tell you the data points of that kind of product. It's been very nascently launched in a nascent stage, like 9th of September, but there have been around 2.3% conversion, incremental conversion on people who have asked for a particular query. It's like a personal companion, you can talk to him, who actually land up to that space.
So this was an interested party who reached out.
Absolutely.
I'm saying there's a lot of stuff which we push to people.
And on the other side, I'll give you that data too. So if you look at the overall retail online, because that data is very mature now for a couple of years. So when Amazon sends out an email to you, to all the consumers, they have a 12% conversion rate of click-through. 12% people open. Now people who check out and go to a payment stage goes to around 5.5 to 6%. And that comes from all email communications, all push notifications. That's a blended average of all communications. So if you're looking at a consumer conversion, but the key there is, if as retailers, we look at sending messages to all our consumers every day, then the conversion numbers will be less than 1%, and I can assure that for sure. The only way you'll get a 5.5% to 12% conversion is when those notifications are personalized, which basically means I send messages to a target segment rather than to the entire bunch of consumers there. So until unless personalization algorithms and targeted segmentation is built up, the conversions for any sort of communications would not just be disturbing for consumers, but they would ultimately become irrelevant.
Yeah. Alex, you want to add?
Yeah, I want to add just two things. So A, with respect to sending out more notifications, more messages, more ad, that's not what it's about. It's might be the easy way, but it's definitely the wrong way, because each of us only has a kind of a limited capacity to realize what he has or she has received. So therefore, it's all about personalization. With respect to second thing I want to add, with respect to the touch points, there's also one thing we have to learn from online. So with respect to the touch points that each individual retailer has, it is quite limited. So, but let's start sharing data, because when I was in a fashion store, that's a touch point for this store, but after that I go to Modern Bazaar or whatsoever to buy other stuff. Let's combine that data, because it's the same consumer, and we need to understand the person or the groups of persons or the segments, and not only how is he or she behaving in my store. That's interesting, but even more interesting, to become more relevant, we need to share data. And we have to stop saying, oh, that's my customer. Nobody is only buying in one store. Nobody.
Yeah, let's move on to, we have time for 2 more questions. Can I get it to the lady at the back there?
Hi, my name is Ina. I'm presenting a company called Vijor. So my question is actually a sequel to the question just asked. From the marketing perspective, we have a lot of data, I understand, but just would like to understand certain examples, how are we segmenting that data? Right now we're talking about the blanket communication going out to all the customers, but if you can give certain examples of how you're segmenting it out and reaching out, that would be great help.
Yeah, so Kiran, you want to take that? Jamila, let me move to you.
On a lighter note, I want to tell you what the difference in the emails I get as a Jet Airways loyalty program member, woman working, and my husband, male working Jet Airways. For some strange reason, Jet Airways assumes most women travelers are housewives with kids. So the emailers I get from them are more about vacations and weekend getaways, in spite of my flights being Tuesday to Friday most times. And my husband takes same flights and gets business flight, incentives and value adds and the kind of hotel. So he will probably not get a Renaissance, I'll get a Renaissance.
So the good news is they are segmenting at least. They may be doing it wrongly.
I think they're just segmenting on gender, and I'm assuming I'm going on my husband's money, not realizing it's either my company money or own money. So on a lighter note, and I always find that it's so hilarious. Both of us are members. I'm actually a tier higher than him, but I still keep getting very much these weekend getaways, children's special fare, resorts versus business hotels emails and incentives, and he keeps getting business-related emails and incentives.
Kiran, anything you want to add?
I saw almost all the questions have the same thing, is the data privacy. Even I have an example, like once I went to a policy bazaar and I just checked for some policy. So they made a mandate, you have to give a mobile number. So then I understood that how many policy companies are there in India. So it's been almost a year, I'm still getting the messages. So I think this way of communicating, what created a challenge to me is my impression towards that policy bazaar has changed. I called to their call center and told people are bombarding with their messages. Every alternative day I'm getting calls. They tell, you have given your mobile number, you have to take the pain. So I think they are not even ready to listen what I'm saying. So this kind of thing is having a negative impact on the brand. You're going to lose a customer. And coming to my business, being into a food industry, we have to take data very seriously. Even though we have a lot of data, I can't push everything to everyone. For example, in India, based on the geographies, the eating habits are completely different. I can't push a chicken sandwich to a vegetarian 10 times and he get pissed off and he will be out of the brand. So actually reaching a customer by segmenting is very important. Otherwise you will be losing the customer.
Yeah. So we have just time for one last question and let's make it quick. Anybody?
I am Vinod from Ada Chicken, Lucknow. And as ma'am rightly, collecting data is not an issue. We have been collecting data offline, online both, and trying to make all kind of data unstructured, structured. And we are trying to get the data analytics also. But as ma'am rightly pointed out, how does a small retailer actually use the data correctly and get the correct insights out of it? Which is cost effective also. Okay, if Jet Airways cannot do it, how can a small retailer do it?
So actually my belief in this is a little different. According to me, a small retailer is using it much better than all us giants, me included. So the neighborhood kirana where you stay, okay, probably knows you, probably knows your wife. He is able to reach a loaf of bread, which is kya, 20 rupees ka aata hai, bread ka packet. He is able to reach it to you in 10 minutes. Amazon ka baap bhi nahi kar payega, let me tell you. Okay, 10 minutes he's able to reach it. He does, of course, he breaks rules, he hires maybe it doesn't pay minimum wages, etc., etc. His CRM, he doesn't have a, what is it called, Watson. He doesn't have Watson, okay? But he knows that आपके यहाँ non-veg नहीं जाता है, आपके यहाँ ये type का मसाला जाता है, etc., etc. And that's because he's an owner, he's an entrepreneur sitting, running his business, okay? As large corporations, what we tend to do is we want cookie cutter. You know, I think you heard so many people talking about सबको messages क्यों मिलते हैं? Messages are so cheap to send, you know, if you're lazy.
That's correct when you are still remaining small. But I am taking my craft of my city to world over. Today we are there in 12 marketplaces. We have mapped more than 9,000 pin codes in India.
Business development कर रहे हो कि question पूछ रहे हो?
Any question? I want to see the road ahead. Why I am here is for learning.
Right, right.
So I learn from the stalwarts only.
So just to summarize an answer on behalf of this group, you know, it's not about tools, it's not about scale, okay? It's about an attitude towards data, okay? And even in a small and medium-sized organization, if there is a particular attitude towards that data, both collecting of that data, using it judiciously, you'll see fabulous results. And I'm sure companies like yours can help feed. So, you know, I think we've had an interesting discussion. We've had more than 7-8 questions. And let's give a big round of applause to this group sitting here. Thank you.